So you ever wanted to wholesale a house? Wholesaling is awesome. If you're watching this video, you probably already know what wholesaling is. Wholesaling is, by the way, my name is Jim Zaspel, if you don't know. Nice to meet you. Wholesaling is a great way to flip houses using none of your own money, none of your own credit, and really minimizing your risk. Because when you get a house under contract and buy at a low price, say down here, right? And then it's an ugly house, distressed property, right? And then you find a cash buyer, someone like me. I do a lot of rehabbing of houses, right? Or maybe a landlord who's willing to pay more, right? Let's say you've got this under contract, like my first deal, right? You're under contract to buy for $35,000, and you go under contract to sell for $50K, right? You make the difference. Your buyer buys it from the seller. You never have to come to closing with the 35 grand, but you pocket the difference between the two of them. In this video, I'm going to show you how to pocket the spread using little none of your own money and not having to bring the funds to closing. Super duper cool. Now here's the thing. What's the difference between $50,000 and $35,000? 15 grand, right? But what about double transfer tax? My first deal, the lesson I'm about to share with you, cost me $1,200 in extra closing costs. Why? Because I had not yet equipped myself with the knowledge that I'm about to share with you. So this is at least a $1,200 value video for you, but really a whole lot more. All right, so let's go over here. By the way, if you don't even finish watching the video, you're like, Jim, I got a deal, but how do I lock it up? How do I tie up the seller? How do I wholesale it? What contracts, what paperwork do I need? Just go to jimswholesalingcontracts.com, okay? But here, back to the lesson of the video. There's a few different things that are really important in your wholesaling paperwork, and I'm not an attorney, I'm not giving you legal advice, I'm just telling you what's important to me as a wholesaler, because yes, I still wholesale a house about every 10 days right now. Even though I rehab a house, we'll do about 65 fix and flips this year. So first of all is deposit, right? How much of a deposit with the seller should you put up? When I first got started in this business, one of the questions I was most scared of was the seller asking me, how much deposit you going to put up? So what question do you think I got in my first deal with the seller, right? Really straightforward. He said, how much deposit you going to put up? And I said, I don't know. What do you think is reasonable? He said $1,000. I said, oh, that's kind of high, don't you think? You know what he said? He said no. I was like, shoot, what do I say now? And so I told him, I said, well, I guess me, myself, and I, because there was no we back then, we usually do a $10 deposit, so how about we split the difference and do $100? You get it? That's not really splitting the difference. You know, 3 zeros, 1 0, 2 zeros in the middle. He laughed, and kind of like you did, not really much. And he agreed to a $100 deposit, so I put up a $100 deposit, okay? So here's my recommendation to you, okay? Your deposits ought to equal, that's the less than sign, less than $100, okay? $100 or less, okay? Equal to or less than $100. That's my opinion, okay? That way you've got a legally binding contract, there's been something exchanged, and the way I tell the sellers is that this is, I guess you call it a deposit, but really it's just a way to ratify the agreement between you and me to make it binding, all right? So, then the question is, well, Jim, when I'm sitting in the kitchen at the kitchen table with the seller, and we've agreed on numbers, we're going to do the paperwork. What kind of agreement do I use? Do I use an agreement of sale, AOS, purchase and sales agreement, whatever I call it, right? An agreement of sale or an option. And my answer is, just like any attorney or any other person giving you advice, they're going to say it depends, right? It depends on your situation. So if you've got a rock solid deal, you know you can get this thing closed based on your experience in that marketplace. The reality is with a seller, they like seeing the promise of an agreement of sale. So what does an agreement of sale say? It says, Mr. Seller, Mr. and Mrs. Seller, I will buy your house under XYZ terms. You know, this price, this closing date, we split the closing cost, maybe a contingency or two, right? So it's an agreement of sale that says I will do something, right? That's obviously a lot more important and powerful to a seller. However, an option agreement says I might do it. I want to reserve the right to do it for 60 days, 90 days, whatever it is, right? So there's 3 rules in business that I think are really important rules to write. 1 is don't write a check you can't afford to lose. 2 is don't personally guarantee debt. And 3 is don't make promises you can't keep. So let me ask you a question. If you've got a deal where you're not sure you can close this deal, meaning you're not sure you can wholesale it, meaning you're not sure you've got it low enough to be able to sell it, should you sign an agreement of sale? My opinion is no, unless you give yourself a weasel clause, a way to weasel out of the agreement, and you actually make that known to the seller, right? It's not just about what's in the paperwork, it's about what you communicate, all right? I was reminded of how important this is recently. on the deal we did. So anyway, if you're not sure you can get the deal to close, then use an option agreement. Okay, and yes, you can get both these agreements using Jim at jimswholesalingcontracts.com. I gotta say, have your attorney take a look at them, double check them. They're good, but just have your attorney review them. All right. But an option agreement, again, it's not a promise. You, the buyer, are not making a promise to the seller with an option contract. The seller is saying, hey, listen, if you want to buy my house in the next 60 days, I'll sell it to you and only you, right? So it's for obvious reasons, it's not as palatable to a seller, okay? But again, you want to make sure the agreement matches what you're telling the seller. If you're telling the seller you're definitely going to close, use agreement sale. If you're going to say, listen, the price you want is really kind of high, pretty darn sure I can get this closed. I've got a great network of investors, and so here's what I'm going to do. Either I'm going to close it, depending on the funding partner I bring, or one of my friends is going to buy it. I've got a lot of funding partners that I shop deals to, so let me run it to them, and within 60 days, I believe we can get this closed. We'll just use an option agreement. Okay, that's kind of how I negotiate using an option agreement, all right? Then, I mentioned earlier, what about contingencies? A contingency is when you say, I'm going to do something if, right? Or I'm going to do something so long as, right? I'm going to buy the house for $50,000 so long as the inspection comes up clear, so long as the survey comes back clean, so long as there's no termites, so long as I can get financing. It's an if, it's a way out. So in other words, if you can't get the financing, if there are termites, you don't like the inspection, or you don't like the survey, if those things exist, you may not buy the house. You have the right to back out of the agreement, okay? And these contingencies are when you use an agreement of sale. You do not need contingencies when you use an option. Why? Because you're not making any promises. You don't need a weasel clause, right? All right, so contingencies, should you have them in there? We'd like to just put it in the agreement of sale, just kind of cover our backside. It says, subject to funding partner's approval. It's in one of the paragraphs, like 17 or 18. And I like that because that way, for some reason, my funding partner or my partner disagrees. Partner happens to be my wife. Then we don't close. But again, you want to make sure that you're setting expectations clearly. You will avoid so many negative conversations if you simply set expectations and have your paperwork to match the expectations that you set. Now, I got another question for you. Have you ever heard of double transfer tax? If you're watching this video and you're in Pennsylvania, you know that we have anywhere from 2% to 5% transfer tax. I think 5% is in Reading, Berks County, city of Reading, which is in Berks County. Philly is 4%. There's some other areas out west a little more, but at least 2%, right? 1% local, 1% state. So, have you ever heard the phrase double transfer tax, right? Double transfer tax. So let's go through an example for a second. What you've probably heard, if you've heard that phrase, and what I guarantee you, and I'm telling you, what I'm about to share with you here, will save you hundreds, if not thousands of dollars per deal. If you get this, and you do this right, using my agreements, following the methods I'm going to share with you, and you educate yourself like this will save you so much money every single deal. All right, so what title agents will tell you is, if you do an assignment, it's a double transfer tax, and you got to pay for that. That's what a title agent will tell you. So let's just run through some simple math here for a second. I'm going to pull up a new screen because I think it'll make it easier to illustrate, right? If you have a house under contract to buy for $80,000 with a seller, what is 4% of that? That would be $3,200 when my math is not correct. Does that sound about right to you?
Roughly.
Roughly, $3,200. I think it's 4%, yeah. Times 0.04 equals $3,200, all right?
It is.
And let's say you're under contract, let's say your buyer, your cash buyer, wants to pay $100,000. You're gonna make 20 grand, right? Well, maybe, let's see. That's obviously $4,000, right? Mm-hmm. So what the title agent's gonna tell you is if you assign your $80,000 contract to the buyer who's willing to pay $100,000, somebody, one or more of the three parties, the seller, wholesaler, buyer, has to come up with a combined total of $7,200, right? That is not cool. Come on. Oh, I've got a shadow here. Sad face. Not cool at all, right? So the question is that right? is that first $3,200 taxable? Well, here's where all the confusion is met. And this is based off of my research, my experience talking to attorneys, based off of my research on literally the Pennsylvania State Department of Revenue, PA Department of Revenue website. They go through case studies what this transfer tax is. And when you go to Jim's Wholesaling Contracts and get my contract, I'm going to give you the link to where the PA Department of Revenue website to the exact article. You can send it to your title company. And in tomorrow's blog, by the way, I'm going to walk through with you how I educated a realtor, okay, who did not want to buy the house from me because it was a wholesale deal. He had heard bad things about assignment contracts, and he had this misconception about the double transfer tax in his head. I sent him the link on the PA Department of State Revenue website where it talks about assignment of contracts and said, listen, it's obviously legit. The state is talking about this and how to handle these transactions. And obviously, according to the state, we do not have to pay this first set of transfer tax. So anyway, I'm going to give you that link when you go to Jim's Wholesaling Contracts and register. So anyway, this can obviously cut into your profit big time. So you're under contract to buy the house for $80,000, right? Let's say that your agreement of sale with the seller says they're paying half the transfer tax, right? And your agreement of sale with the buyer says they're paying half the transfer tax. You're going to wind up paying, the seller would be expecting to pay, so the total transfer tax is $3,200 plus $100. So the seller is expecting to pay $1,600, right? $1,600. This guy is expecting to pay $2,000. Again, half of the transfer tax due with $100,000, right? For a total of $3,600. Follow? That's what half the transfer tax on $100,000 is, half the transfer tax on $100,000 is. But yet the total transfer tax due is, get this, the transfer tax is calculated on this figure right here, which is the assignment fee plus the contract equals what the cash buyer pays. That's what the transfer tax is calculated on, which in this example is $4,000. Okay, so again, the state the state and municipalities want $4,000. The half of this transfer is $2,000. Half of this is $1,600. So you're going to have to wind up out of your $20,000, you pay $400. The difference between $4,000 and $3,600, right? So think about this. What if you just listen to the title agent who doesn't know their behind from a hole in the ground? Instead of being out $400, you'd be out $3,200. So in this example, I just saved you $2,800. Why? Because you educated yourself. So let me just really make this clear for you, okay? Let me get the other slide. If you have no clue what I just showed you, all right, watch the video again. Then you still have no clue, it's a little detail, a little bit of math, right? Here's all you need to know, okay? The sale price that your cash buyer is paying, which is your contract price plus your assignment. The gross sales price your cash buyer is paying, that's what the transfer tax is calculated on. Not that plus anything else, just that, and only once, okay? Use that in the link at jimswholesalingcontracts.com, and that, my friends, is how you avoid double transfer tax. Now, again, tomorrow's blog, I'm going to show you how I educated and worked with some of the scripts and the conversations I had in emails with this agent. I made $12,000 on today's Thursday, right? So I made $12,000 my first wholesale deal with them, and then the deal we're closing tomorrow, making $18,500. $18,500 wholesale. That same guy, another deal, and he brought a buyer who's making $6,000 in that deal. So you can see how valuable that education is, doing what you're doing now and getting the tools you get at jimswholesalingcontracts.com. All right, so if you got a value out of this, which I'm sure you did, I know you did because it's really super cool stuff. If you got value out of this, then do me a favor and share this around, tag some friends who are wholesalers, put this on a couple of social media groups for wholesaling, especially if you're in or around Philadelphia or in Pennsylvania, some other place. Just share it around, show me some love, and thanks for watching. Stay tuned for tomorrow's blog. It is going to be super duper cool. See you tomorrow.